I never expected the truth to hit me while I was standing in my own kitchen staring at a cracked laptop screen in the middle of a perfectly ordinary Tuesday. But that's exactly how it happened. One minute, I was trying to salvage some old client files for the nonprofit I work at, and the next, I was reading message after deleted message that proved my entire family had been lying to my face for years. The trust my grandfather left behind, the one that was supposed to help pay for Emma's future and keep our little cliffside house stable, wasn't just smaller than they claimed. It was gone, emptied, and the people who did it were the two men I had spent my whole life trying to believe still gave a damn about me. If you've ever watched someone you loved rewrite reality so they could keep their comfortable lies intact, you already know how this story feels. Stick with me. My name is Olivia Parker. I'm 29 years old and I live with my husband Ryan and our 7-year-old daughter Emma in a small, weather-beaten house perched on the cliffs above Big Sur. It's not one of the massive gated estates the tourists photograph. It's the kind of place that creaks when the wind picks up and smells like salt and eucalyptus. I like it that way, or at least I used to. That afternoon, I was digging through an ancient external hard drive I'd almost thrown away twice. Ryan had asked me to see if any of his old tax documents were still on it. I wasn't looking for trouble. I was just tired of the constant low-grade anxiety that had been sitting in my chest for months ever since my father started making pointed comments about family loyalty and not airing dirty laundry every time I mentioned the trust. I plugged the drive in, opened an old folder labeled Jason's Stuff, 2022, and there they were. Screenshots of text threads my brother had deleted from his phone, but apparently never cleared from the backup. The first one was from Jason to my father, time-stamped almost 3 years ago. Dad, the gallery is underwater again. Can we pull another 80 from Olivia's side? She never checks the statements anyway. Tell her the market's bad like last time. My father's reply came 20 minutes later. Fine, but keep it quiet. Your sister's been asking too many questions lately. She's always been too sensitive about money. We'll say it went to property taxes on the retreat. She'll believe it. I read it 3 times before my hands started shaking. Then I opened the next screenshot, and the next. There were dozens. My brother and my father discussing how much they could take, how to word the fake K1 forms, how to make sure I stayed in the dark. One message even joked that Olivia's playing Save the Whales again. She won't notice if we borrow a little more for the new deck. They had been siphoning everything. The money that was supposed to be Emma's college fund. The money that helped us keep the house when Ryan's freelance architecture work dried up last year. All of it funneled into Jason's failing art gallery and whatever else they needed to maintain the perfect Parker image in this tight little coastal community. I sat down hard on one of the kitchen stools. The Pacific was right outside the window, gray and restless under the afternoon fog. I could hear Emma in the next room singing to her stuffed whale. Ryan was still at a client meeting down in Carmel. And I was alone with the kind of proof that makes your stomach drop straight through the floor. My phone rang before I could even close the folder. It was my father. I almost didn't answer, but some old stupid habit made me swipe the screen. Olivia, he said, voice already tight with that familiar mix of disappointment and command. I need you to come by the house tomorrow. We're having a small gathering for the Homeowners Association board. Your brother will be there. It would look bad if you skipped it again. I stared at the screenshot still glowing on the laptop. My voice came out flat. I'm not really in the mood for one of your board meetings, Dad. There was a pause, the kind he used when he was deciding whether to be charming or cold. This isn't a request. The association is voting on the new coastal access rules. Some of the newer residents have been pushing for changes that could affect property values. We need a united front. Your mother already told everyone you'd be there. I let out a short, bitter laugh before I could stop it. A united front? Right. Because that's what matters most, making sure the neighbors think the Parkers still have everything under control. Don't start with that tone, my father snapped. You've been difficult enough lately. I don't know what's gotten into you, but whatever it is, you need to get over it. Family comes first. Always has. I thought about the messages, about the years of the market's bad and property taxes went up and we had to dip into reserves, about Emma asking last month if she could still go to the summer science camp because Grandpa said the trust pays for special things like that. Dad, I said, and my voice sounded strange, even to me, how much of the trust is actually left. Silence stretched on the other end. Then he gave a short, dismissive exhale. That's not something you need to worry about. I manage the trust. I always have. You focus on your little environmental job and your family. Leave the finances to the people who understand them. I closed my eyes. The sarcasm rose up like bile. Right, because clearly I'm too emotional and too busy saving sea otters to notice when my own inheritance disappears. Must be nice to have a daughter who's conveniently incompetent whenever money goes missing. Olivia. His voice dropped into that low warning register he used when he was done pretending to be patient. You will be at the house tomorrow. You will smile, you will make small talk with the board members, and you will not bring up the trust or anything else that could embarrass this family. Do you understand me? I looked back at the laptop, at the proof sitting right there in black and white. Proof that he and my brother had been treating me like a line item they could quietly erase. I understand perfectly, I said, and I hung up. For a long minute, I just sat there, the phone still in my hand, listening to the wind push against the windows. Emma wandered in holding her whale and asked if we could go down to the tide pools later. I told her yes, because what else do you say when your 7-year-old still believes the grown-ups in her life are telling the truth? I didn't call Ryan right away. I didn't even call my best friend Avery Quinn, who would have dropped everything and driven up from Monterey in an hour. Instead, I opened a new folder on the hard drive, copied every single screenshot, and made 3 backups. Then I sat on the floor of the living room with Emma, while she showed me how her whale could swim across the rug, and I tried to figure out how I was supposed to keep breathing normally when the ground under my entire life had just turned out to be made of wet paper. The next morning, I woke up to a text from my mother. Linda Parker, your father said you were short with him yesterday. Please don't make this difficult. The board meeting is important. Wear something nice. People notice. I stared at it for a long time before typing back. Me, I'll think about it. She didn't reply. She didn't have to. In our family, silence was its own kind of pressure. I spent the morning at my desk trying to focus on work reviewing grant reports for the Coastal Conservancy, but the screenshots kept flashing behind my eyes. Every time I closed them, I saw my father's name next to Jason's, casually deciding how much of my daughter's future they could afford to steal this month. The bitterness tasted like metal in my mouth. These were the same people who had spent years telling me I was too sensitive and too quick to assume the worst. And the whole time they were the ones writing the worst-case scenario in real time. Around 10, Avery called. She works with me at the Conservancy, handles the education programs, while I do the financial tracking. We've been close since we both moved to the area 5 years ago. 2 women who didn't quite fit the polished Big Sur social scene. You sound like you're about to punch a hole in your desk, she said after I answered. What happened? I almost told her. The words were right there, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the old reflex to protect the family name even now. Or maybe I just needed one more day to decide whether I was going to burn it all down or keep pretending the smoke wasn't already in my lungs. Nothing I can't handle, I said instead. Just family stuff. Avery was quiet for a second. You know you can tell me right. Whatever it is, I'm not going to run to the Homeowners Association and tattle. I managed a dry laugh. That's exactly what they're afraid of. That someone outside the circle might find out the Parkers aren't as perfect as the view from their deck. We talked for a few more minutes about work, about Emma's latest obsession with tide pool creatures, about nothing that mattered. When I hung up, I felt lonelier than before. That afternoon, I drove down the winding road to the little market in the village. I needed milk and bread, and maybe a bottle of wine I could drink after Emma went to bed. While I was standing in the narrow aisle between the organic produce and the overpriced olive oil, I ran into Diane Holt, the current president of our gated community's Homeowners Association. She's in her 60s, perfectly coiffed, and has been best friends with my mother for 15 years. Olivia, she said, voice dripping with the kind of concern that isn't really concern. I heard you might not make it to the board meeting tomorrow. Your father will be so disappointed. You know how important these things are for keeping the character of the retreat intact. I looked at her and felt the sarcasm rise before I could swallow it. I'm sure the character of the retreat is far more important than whether one family member shows up to vote on whether we can still walk on the public beach without getting fined. Diane's smile tightened. You've always had such a unique way of looking at things. Your parents have done so much for this community. It would be a shame if people started to think the Parker family was divided. There it was, the first little crack in the social circle. Not a direct threat, just a gentle reminder that belonging here came with conditions. I paid for my groceries and drove home with my jaw clenched so hard it hurt. When I pulled into the driveway, Ryan's car was already there. He was home early. He took one look at my face when I walked in and set down the mug he was holding. What happened? I didn't answer right away. I put the groceries on the counter, walked over to the laptop still sitting open on the kitchen table, and turned the screen toward him. Read the folder labeled Jason's stuff. Then tell me if I'm overreacting. He read in silence. When he finally looked up, his expression was a mixture of fury and something close to grief. Jesus, Olivia, how long has this been going on? Years, I said. My voice sounded hollow. They've been draining it since before Emma was born. My father signed off on every transfer. Jason just kept asking and my father kept saying yes. Ryan ran a hand over his face. What are you gonna do? I looked out the window at the ocean. The fog was rolling in again, swallowing the horizon. I don't know yet, I said. But I know what my father expects me to do. Show up tomorrow, smile, keep the secret. Protect the family name even while they finish emptying the account that was supposed to be mine. My husband was quiet for a long moment. Then he said the only thing that could have made the bitterness worse. You don't have to go. We can figure this out without them. I wanted to believe that. I really did. But I also knew my father, and I knew the people in this community. If I skipped that meeting, the rumors would start before the sun went down. And once the rumors started, the isolation would follow polite smiles that didn't reach the eyes, invitations that stopped arriving neighbors, suddenly too busy to chat at the market. My father wouldn't have to lift a finger. The social machinery of this place would do it for him. I'm going to go, I said quietly, but not because he told me to. Because I want to see their faces when they realize I'm not the only one who knows anymore. Ryan didn't argue. He just pulled me into a hug that smelled like the cedar soap he uses and the faint salt air that never quite leaves our clothes. I let myself stay there for a minute, eyes closed, trying to memorize what it felt like to be held by someone who wasn't lying to me. Later that night, after Emma was asleep, I sat on the edge of our bed and opened the screenshots again. I forwarded the whole folder to a new email address I'd created just for this one my father and brother didn't know about. Then I added one more name to the recipient list. Marcus Ellison, the investigative journalist who ran the small but respected local paper that covered Big Sur and the surrounding coast. We'd met once at a conservancy fundraiser. He'd struck me as the kind of person who actually cared about the truth more than access. I didn't send the email yet. I just saved it as a draft. I didn't know if I was going to press send. I didn't know if I had the stomach to watch my father's carefully constructed world collapse in real time. But I also didn't know how to keep swallowing the lies anymore. Outside, the wind picked up against the cliffs. Somewhere below, the tide was coming in. And in the quiet dark of our bedroom, I finally let myself say the words out loud, even if no one else could hear them. They stole from my daughter, and my father helped them do it. The bitterness settled into something harder, something that felt a lot like the beginning of a decision I wasn't ready to name yet. But it was there, and it wasn't going anywhere. The night passed in fragments of half-sleep and sharp awakenings. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those deleted messages glowing on the screen, my father's name right next to my brother's, casually deciding how much of Emma's future they could afford to erase this quarter. By morning, the bitterness had settled into something colder and more deliberate. I got Emma dressed, packed her lunch, and drove her down the winding road to the little school in the village, while Ryan headed to a client site in Carmel. Neither of us said much. We didn't need to. The weight of what I hadn't told him yet sat between us like fog. I dropped Emma off, watched her run toward her friends with her backpack bouncing, and then sat in the car for 5 full minutes with my hands on the steering wheel. The community center where the homeowners association met was only another 10 minutes away. My father's text from the night before was still sitting unread on my phone. Frank Parker. Don't be late. Wear the blue dress your mother likes, and for God's sake, smile. I didn't answer. I drove straight there anyway because skipping would have been the same as handing him the win before the fight even started. The parking lot was already half full, with the kind of expensive SUVs that looked like they had never seen actual dirt. I parked at the far end, checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, and practiced the version of my face that didn't look like it wanted to set the entire gated retreat on fire. Inside the meeting room smelled like expensive coffee and the ocean air that always managed to sneak through the vents. My father was already at the head table with the other board members, including Diane Holt, who gave me a tight little nod that didn't reach her eyes. My mother sat in the front row wearing her usual calm expression, the one she had perfected over decades of pretending everything was fine. My brother Jason was there too, leaning against the wall near the back like he owned the place. He caught my eye and gave me the same easy grin he had been using since we were kids, the one that used to make me believe he actually liked having a little sister. I took a seat in the second row and kept my phone in my lap, the folder of screenshots still open in a hidden app. The meeting dragged through the usual agenda items: new landscaping rules for the common areas, complaints about tourists parking too close to the cliffs, a proposal to raise association fees again. Every time someone mentioned protecting the character of the retreat, I felt the sarcasm rise like acid. The character of the retreat apparently included stealing from your own daughter while smiling at the neighbors. Halfway through, my father stood up to speak. He was wearing the navy blazer he reserved for these occasions, the one that made him look like the benevolent patriarch of a coastal dynasty, instead of the man who had signed off on draining my inheritance. We've had some concerns raised by newer residents about access points and liability, he said, voice smooth and authoritative. It's important we present a united front on these issues. Division only invites outside interference. Family properties like ours have stood for generations because we understood that loyalty to the community and to each other comes before individual grievances. His eyes flicked to me for half a second. It was subtle. No one else in the room would have noticed, but I felt it like a slap. Individual grievances. That was what he called the fact that he and my brother had emptied the trust. I kept my face blank and my hand still on my phone. After the meeting broke up, people clustered in small groups near the coffee station. Diane Holt cornered me before I could escape. "Olivia, I'm so glad you made it," she said loud enough for the people nearby to hear. "Your father mentioned you've been under some stress lately. We all understand how demanding young families can be. If you ever need to talk to someone who's been through it, my door is always open." The implication was clear: fall in line or we'll all assume you're the problem. I gave her the smallest possible smile. "Thanks, Diane. I'll keep that in mind the next time I need advice on how to pretend everything's perfect." Her expression tightened for a fraction of a second before the polished mask slid back into place. She moved on to the next cluster of people. I felt the first real ripple of isolation start to move through the room, subtle shifts in conversation, eyes that glanced away a little too quickly when I looked in their direction. It was already beginning. My father hadn't even had to say anything direct. The machinery of this place did the work for him. I slipped out the side door and walked to my car. My mother caught up with me in the parking lot before I could open the door. "Olivia, wait." Her voice was quieter than usual, almost hesitant. She glanced back toward the building like she was checking to make sure no one was close enough to hear. "Your father is worried about you. He thinks you're struggling with some things." I turned to face her. The sarcasm was right there ready, but something in her expression made me hold it back for once. "Is that what he told you? That I'm struggling?" She hesitated. For the first time in years, I saw something crack in the calm surface she always presented. "He said you've been asking questions about the trust again, that you're upset about money." "Upset about money?" I repeated. The bitterness leaked through anyway. "That's one way to put it. Another way is that I found proof he and Jason have been draining it for years and calling it family needs." My mother's face went still. She looked down at her hands, then back up at me. When she spoke again, her voice was so low I almost missed it. "I knew some of it," she said. "Not all, not the amounts. He told me it was temporary, that Jason's gallery was struggling and we needed to help him until things turned around. I thought once the business stabilized, we could put it back. I didn't realize how much had gone." The words landed like cold water. My mother had known. Not everything, but enough. Enough to stay quiet while they lied to my face and smiled at the neighbors. Enough to let me believe the trust was still there for Emma when it wasn't. I felt something sharp and final shift inside my chest. "And you didn't think to tell me, your own daughter." She reached for my arm and I stepped back before she could touch me. The movement was small, but it felt huge in the quiet parking lot. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have said something sooner." "But your father, he was so certain it was the right thing for the family, for all of us." I almost laughed. It came out as a short, ugly sound. "For all of us." Right, because making sure Jason could keep pretending to be a successful artist was more important than Emma's future or my ability to trust either of you. My mother looked like she might cry, which only made the bitterness worse. Tears had never changed anything in this family. They were just another performance. I have to go, I said. Emma's waiting. I got in the car and drove away before she could answer. The road curved along the cliffs, the ocean stretching out gray and endless on my left. I kept both hands on the wheel and tried to breathe past the tight knot in my throat. My mother had known, not the full scope, but she had known enough to stay silent. That was its own kind of betrayal, quieter but no less real. By the time I reached the house, the decision I had been circling all night had settled into something solid. I didn't call my father. I didn't call my brother. I sat at the kitchen table with the laptop open and the draft email to Marcus Ellison still waiting in the hidden account. The subject line read, "Deleted messages and the Parker Family Trust, off the record for now." I didn't hit send, not yet, but I moved the cursor over the button and left it there for a long time, watching the little arrow hover. My phone buzzed with a text from Jason. Jason Parker. Heard you were at the meeting. Dad said you looked tense. Everything okay, sis? We should grab coffee soon. Talk about whatever's bothering you. I stared at it. The casual sis, the fake concern, the assumption that I would keep playing the role of the slightly difficult but ultimately harmless little sister who could be managed with a little charm and a few well-placed lies. I typed back 3 words and hit send before I could second-guess it. Me, I know everything. The reply came almost immediately. Jason Parker. What are you talking about? I didn't answer. I closed the laptop, walked to the window, and watched the fog start to roll in over the water again. Somewhere down the coast, my father was probably already on the phone with Diane Holt, or one of the other board members spinning whatever story made me the unstable one. My mother was probably sitting in their living room trying to decide whether to call me again or pretend the conversation in the parking lot had never happened. And I was here alone in the house that was supposed to be protected by money that no longer existed, holding proof that the 2 men who were supposed to look out for me had spent years treating me like an inconvenience they could quietly rob. The bitterness was still there, sharp and familiar, but underneath it, something else was forming, quiet, steady, and completely unwilling to go back to pretending. I opened the email draft again. My finger hovered over send. Outside, the wind pushed against the cliffs. The house creaked the way it always did when the weather turned. I didn't know yet what I was going to do with the truth sitting in my hands. I only knew I wasn't going to swallow it anymore. Not for my father, not for my brother, not for the illusion of a family that had never actually existed the way they wanted me to believe. The cursor hovered over the send button for one long breath. Outside the window, the fog had thickened into a soft gray wall that swallowed the horizon. I thought about Emma's face when she asked if we could still afford the science camp. I thought about every time my father had looked me in the eye and told me the trust was complicated and not something I needed to worry about. I thought about my mother's quiet admission in the parking lot and the way my brother still signed his texts with sis like nothing had changed. I clicked send. The email to Marcus Ellison left my outbox with a soft whoosh that sounded louder than it should have in the quiet kitchen. I didn't add a message. The folder of screenshots was enough. He would understand what he was looking at. Whether he did anything with it was up to him. For the first time in weeks, the knot in my chest loosened just enough for me to draw a full breath. I didn't tell Ryan what I had done. Not yet. I picked Emma up from school, listened to her chatter about tide pool creatures, and made dinner like it was any other evening. But the air in the house felt different. Charged. Like the moment before a storm finally breaks. The storm arrived the next morning. My father called at 7:30. I was still in my robe, coffee in hand, when his name lit up the screen. I almost let it go to voicemail. Instead, I answered on speaker and set the phone on the counter so I could keep stirring oatmeal for Emma. Olivia. His voice was tight with the particular fury he reserved for when someone broke the script. What the hell did you do? I didn't pretend confusion. I sent the truth to someone who might actually care about it. You and Jason spent years treating the trust like your personal slush fund. I have the messages. I have the numbers. I'm done pretending I don't. There was a beat of silence, then the explosion I had been expecting. You selfish, ungrateful girl. The words came out low and venomous. Do you have any idea what you've done? This community runs on trust, on reputation. You just handed a stranger enough ammunition to destroy everything your mother and I have built here. For what? So you can feel morally superior for 5 minutes. I kept stirring the oatmeal even though my hand was shaking. I did it so my daughter doesn't grow up believing the people who are supposed to protect her are allowed to rob her blind and call it love. Your daughter will be fine, he snapped. She has two parents who work. She doesn't need a handout from a trust that was never really hers to begin with. It was family money, family decisions. You were never supposed to know the details because you were never supposed to question them. The sarcasm rose before I could stop it. Right, because in this family, the women get to smile and host the board meetings while the men decide whose future is worth protecting. How convenient that my share just happened to be the one that was complicated. He didn't deny it. He didn't even pause. You will call that journalist back and tell him it was a misunderstanding. You will issue a retraction. And you will come to the house tonight so we can discuss how you are going to repair the damage you've caused to this family's name? Diane already called your mother this morning. People are talking. Of course they were. The social circle was already closing ranks. I could picture Diane Holt at the market later murmuring to the other women in her careful, concerned voice about how the Parker girl has always been a little unstable, too emotional about money. I'm not coming to the house, I said. My voice stayed even. The calm that had been building underneath the bitterness was finally surfacing. I'm not issuing any retraction, and I'm not going to keep playing the role of the difficult daughter who needs to be managed. Olivia, no. The word came out sharper than I intended. You don't get to call me difficult because I refused to stay quiet while you and Jason emptied an account that was supposed to be for Emma. You don't get to wrap theft in the language of family loyalty and expect me to nod along. I'm done. He was breathing hard on the other end. I could almost see the color rising in his face the way his jaw would be working, like it always did when he was losing control of a situation. If you do this, he said, voice low and deliberate, you will not be welcome here anymore. Not at the house, not at community events, not anywhere that matters in this place. Your mother and I will not be made to look like fools because you decided to throw a tantrum with evidence you never should have had. There it was, the final threat, not legal action, not financial ruin, just the clean surgical removal of belonging, the thing this entire gated stretch of coast ran on. I looked out the window at the cliffs and the gray water beyond, the same view I had loved for 5 years, the same view that had started to feel like a cage the moment I saw those screenshots. Then I guess I won't be welcome anymore, I said. That's fine. I've been learning how to live without the version of this family that only exists when it's convenient for you. I hung up before he could answer. The rest of the day moved in pieces. Avery called around noon, voice careful. I heard some things at the market. Diane Holt was holding court by the coffee bar. Something about you and the trust and how you've been struggling. You okay? I told her the short version. She didn't gasp or offer empty sympathy. She just said, if you need somewhere to stay while you figure things out, my couch is yours. No questions. That night, Jason sent a long text. Not the usual casual sis, a real message. Jason Parker, Dad called me. He's losing it. Look, I know what the messages say. I know how it looks. But it wasn't all him. He kept saying we had to protect the family image or everything would fall apart. The gallery was failing and he didn't want Mom to know how bad it was. I went along with it because I didn't know how to stop. I'm sorry. I should have told you years ago. I'm sorry about Emma's money. I'm sorry I let him convince me it was okay because you wouldn't notice. Please don't hate me forever. I read it twice. Then I blocked his number. The apology didn't change the screenshots. It didn't put the money back. It didn't undo the years of being told I was too sensitive, too emotional, too difficult for noticing the math didn't add up. It was just another Parker trying to manage the fallout now that the truth was out. Marcus Ellison replied to my email the next morning, short and professional. Marcus Ellison. I've reviewed the documents. I'm going to need to verify a few things before I can do anything with this, but if even half of it checks out, this is going to be a story. Are you willing to go on record? I told him, yes, not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted the record to exist somewhere outside my own head, somewhere my father and brother couldn't rewrite it again. Over the next week, the community did exactly what I expected. Invitations stopped. Diane Holt and the other board wives went from polite nods to outright avoidance at the market. Someone left an anonymous note in our mailbox suggesting we consider our impact on property values if we stayed. Ryan's freelance work dried up faster than usual. Whispers traveled faster than the coastal fog. My mother called once more. I let it go to voicemail. She didn't leave a message. The local paper ran a careful piece 3 weeks later. Not a full expose with names and dollar amounts. Marcus was too good a journalist for that without ironclad confirmation, but enough. Enough that people in town started connecting dots. Enough that the Homeowners Association board suddenly had more pressing issues than new landscaping rules. Enough that my father's name started appearing in conversations, followed by the word unfortunate. He never called again after that last conversation. Neither did my brother. The silence was its own ending. We put the house on the market in early fall. It sold faster than we expected. The new owners wanted the view and didn't care about the family drama attached to it. Ryan found steady work with a firm in Monterey. We moved into a smaller place inland closer to Avery and farther from the cliffs and the gated world that had decided we no longer belonged. Emma asked once why we didn't visit Grandpa and Grandma anymore. I told her the truth in the simplest words I could find. Sometimes the people who share your blood still choose to hurt you. When that happens, you get to choose yourself instead. She nodded like it made sense and went back to drawing whales. Kids are better at accepting hard truths than adults sometimes. I still see my mother's name on the occasional blocked call log. I still drive past the turnoff to the retreat sometimes and feel the old pull of belonging. But I don't turn. I keep going. The bitterness hasn't completely left. It probably never will. It sits alongside the quieter knowledge that I did the only thing I could live with. My father wanted a united front. What he got was the truth walking out the door and not coming back. Some nights after Emma is asleep and Ryan is working late, I sit on our new back deck and watch the hills instead of the ocean. The air smells different here. Less salt, more dry grass and eucalyptus. It's not better or worse. It's just mine. I chose my daughter. I chose the version of myself that could look in the mirror without flinching. I chose to stop swallowing lies dressed up as family loyalty. If that meant walking away from the only blood I had ever known, then that was the price. And I would pay it again. Blood does not mean loyalty. Sometimes the people who share your name are the ones most willing to rewrite your story to protect their own comfort. Choosing yourself is not selfish. It is survival. And survival can be lonely, but it is still yours. Thank you for staying with me through all of this. Drop your thoughts below.